So don't you just hate those people? They're immoral, they're unjust, they never work hard, yet everything seems to go their way. Over the last few weeks, the gospel readings that we've been hearing on Sundays all come from Matthew's gospel. And Jesus is really trying to get to the heart of what it means to live in peace with one another, what living in the kingdom of God might be like. This started a few weeks ago with how we might resolve conflict, a real practical introduction to how to deal with other people when things don't go right. And you can see how that triggered the question from one of his disciples, Peter, how many times should I forgive my brother? And that continues into this Sunday's gospel, when Jesus gives a real insight into what the kingdom of God is like, and particularly God's mercy, his compassion, and his sense of justice, God's generosity. Jesus tells a story about casual labourers who are all waiting at the crossroads for a day's work. And this is a common thing that you might see around the world. People wait to be employed for a day's work. And they do a day's work and they get paid in hand, cash, for the work that they've done. No work, no cash. If you're too sick to work, you don't get paid. And so a landowner goes out to get some labourers for his vineyard. And when he goes at dawn, he gathers some people to come and work his land. And he agrees with them a fair wage, 1 denarii. Yet there's so much work to be done, perhaps it's harvest time, that he goes out again at the 3rd hour and the 6th hour, the 9th hour. Even at the 11th hour, he goes out and gets more people to work in his vineyard. Now at the end of the day, the 12th hour, he gets his bailiff to go and settle the accounts with all the labourers. And so he pays those that arrived last first, and he gives them 1 denarii. He gives those people that have only worked an hour a full day's pay. And then he goes back through the rest of the labourers that he's employed that day, and they all get 1 denarii, no matter how much they work. And you can imagine the grumbling that's growing amongst the workers, yet one of them comes and says something and says, how come we got paid 1 denarii and so did all of them? We've done so much more work than they have. Yet the landowner's response is this: why be envious because I am generous? You see, the landowner still paid those that came first the agreed rate that he was going to pay them. Yet they were still envious that those that didn't do as much work got treated in the same way. Those people that only worked 1 hour got the same amount as those that had worked all day. They got a day's wage. They got what they needed to survive. Regardless of how much they worked, these people probably still had the same cost of living. They needed to pay their rent, they needed to pay for food, they needed to support their families. And the landowner gives each of these what they need. And this is what Jesus is trying to tell us what the kingdom of God is like. No matter how long we've been journeying with God or how close we think we are to God, God is generous to all. And that sometimes grates us, that sometimes makes us cry out, but that's not fair. You see, we do so much to try and make sure our society is more just. And that's right to fight for justice. Our world and our society should be more just. It should be fairer. But the thing is, with God, it goes beyond what we think is just and what we think is fair. In the first reading from the prophet Isaiah, God tells us, my ways are not your ways. God goes beyond our understanding of justice and fairness, and he gives generously. And so the challenge is for us is to not get jealous at that, to not get angry because the Lord is good to all that he has made, because the Lord loves everyone. And that can be quite hard to stomach at times, particularly if we feel that good things are happening to bad people. And these are real stumbling blocks in faith. But Jesus doesn't try to explain himself. He doesn't give the reasons why the landowner has given the wages like he did. He doesn't start to justify it. But he just says to the grumbling one, why are you envious that I'm generous? The kingdom of God belongs to a God who is generous, whose ways are not our ways, who shows mercy and compassion. And perhaps we should pray that we would all help build that kingdom of God where we give generously